Good morning, Laguna Woods. What a special show we have for you today. Or at least it's a special show for me, because there are certain people in our congregation and, well, in the world that I just respect and admire. And I don't want to embarrass you too much, but Carolyn Cummings is one of those people that I just appreciate so much your walk with the Lord for all these years and this. And so we'll get into that in just a second. But I asked Carolyn about a favorite verse, and or at least a verse that's important in her life. So let me read it, because we always start our show with a verse for the day. In 2 Chronicles, which is in the Old Testament, at chapter 16, verse 9, it says this: "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him." Carolyn, why did you choose that? Why is that verse
Well, that's Rick Warren's verse.
It is.
And when he first told us that, probably in 1980,
yes,
I thought how I had a vision of God just looking over the earth and finding Rick and Kay.
Yeah.
They were just kids.
He was 25.
Yes, they were just kids, but so wise and committed to the Lord.
Yes.
And that verse fit him.
That is great. Well, I feel it fits you too, myself. But it's a challenging verse because it really asks us to be committed to the Lord. Yeah. And that's kind of how, some have said that Rick Warren's churches, well, the term is actually easy believism. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
He asks us to be so committed. So, Carolyn, when Rick and Kay and just some initial friends that he had made, we're going to start the church on Easter of 1980. They hand-addressed 15,000 letters and mailed them out to the community, put a stamp on them, and mailed them out to the community. And you were one of the ones who gets this letter.
Right.
What did you think? Or can you remember it at all?
I can, because that was unusual to get a postcard in the mail about a church, a brand new church. We lived in Mission Viejo, and I think a lot of our neighbors got the letter too.
Was it a postcard or
It was a postcard, I believe.
Okay.
And hand addressed, that drew my attention.
Yes.
But then the topic of Rick's messages was different. It wasn't like you see on the billboards of churches. It was, God wants you to be successful in your life.
Huh.
And it sounded a little bit more like a business seminar to me. And because of that, I didn't throw it away.
Ah.
We were already involved in a church, and but I saved the card, and I thought, this needs some investigating. And I think the Lord wanted me to keep that. So, yeah.
Because we usually throw out junk mail.
It wasn't junk mail, something different about that.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
And you were saying that it came at a time in your life where you needed.
Yes, I'd just been through a divorce, and we were looking for a church. And
how many kids did you have?
Two children.
Two. And so you wanted them to have something also.
Right, also, yeah.
So you went to that church, and what did you
We'd already been to church that morning. And and my son was driving the Volkswagen Bug. And I said, by the way, we were on our way home. I said, do we want to check out that new church? Yeah, he said. And we were right at Alicia Parkway, and he turned that car so quick. I think the Lord turned the steering wheel. And we were on our way to Laguna Hills High School. And we got there on time. And after the service, Rick came out to talk to us and remembered our name the next Sunday, because my son and I took our daughter also, and he knew our names right away.
That is just
and the
so
little
amazing.
theater probably had 30 people in it.
Really? That low?
Probably, yeah. Wow. This was in July.
Of 1980.
Yeah.
The first time Diane and I visited was in 1985. And we had come, this is 15 years before we ever joined the church. But we went in 1985, we were moving back here from Pennsylvania. We walk onto, we felt we were going back to our church that we had left, and we did, but we wanted to visit Saddleback first. And we walked on at the high school, and we're getting coffee, and Rick Warren walks up and says, I know you're new at this church. Mm-hmm. I said, how do you know? I was so impressed with him at that, but that's how he was, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And that's one of the things about Laguna Woods Village. The little start over, it reminds me so much of how we started out with a trailer and setting up every Sunday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Carolyn has joined the church back in 1980, I guess, then. Your kids came through the system, through the youth system.
We were baptized the last Sunday in 1980, between Christmas and New Year's, by immersion.
It's awesome.
In a borrowed church.
So if you see the videos, if you ever go to our information/new member class, and you see the history of it, Carolyn is in the video sitting right behind Rick during one portion of that, which I love every time I see it. But anyway, time went on, and Carolyn, I thank you so much. You were, when we got the vision to start in Laguna Woods, you were right there then with us, helping us do that.
Yeah. That first Sunday, I went early to the Clubhouse 3.
Which is where the first service
wondering,
was.
What are you going to do with me now, Lord? I'm in a new place. And there were little groups of people standing around. I walked up to a group of people.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what can I do for you? And in a second, Alice Grogan had a lanyard around my neck, and it said, usher.
It said usher?
I had done a lot of things.
So you passed the screening for usher?
Yeah, I never had been an usher, so I was an usher.
That is so great and typical. I know Alice, too. She's not at our campus, but should be. Anyway, so those years ago, I asked you, you've known Rick there for longer than any of us. So do you have a story that you could, we always want something funny on our pastor.
Well, it's a cute story.
Okay.
Somebody we don't talk about much is Steve Williams.
Okay.
Steve Williams and his wife Jean were Rick and Kay's first assistants. Oh. And Steve and Rick were in college together, best friends, best man at each other's weddings. They were buddies, so it was obvious for Rick to invite Steve to come and help the first year, 2 years actually. And Steve and Jean just lived down the street from me. And I was driving an old car. Steve and Jean were driving an old car, and Rick was driving an old car too.
Yes.
And sometimes we had to trade. If something wasn't working, we'd borrow each other's cars.
But you were in there together. Okay.
So one day, Rick came over to Steve and Jean's, and was bringing the car to me, and he drove in the driveway, and the garage door was up. Now, my son had been collecting aluminum cans, most of which were beer cans, in a huge collection from junior high on up. And he decided he didn't want them anymore, but he wanted to flatten them. So he drove the car over the cans to flatten the beer cans. And then, because we came from Minneapolis, he had several hockey sticks and loved to play hockey. So he would line them up in the garage and had his net at one end of it, and he would practice diving those beer cans into the net. And pretty soon here came Rick. And, oh, good, let's play hockey, Steve. He grabs a hockey stick, and I looked out there, and now this is my pastor playing hockey with my son in the garage.
With beer cans.
With beer cans. And there's less than 10 years difference in their age. So,
That's funny. That's funny. Well, Carolyn, we got to call it a day. We're up against it, but thank you so much for sharing all you did. We loved it. We love you. Thanks for being a part of our church. Bye, Laguna Woods.